You almost didn't make it. Not in some dramatic way. Statistically, if you'd been born a few thousand years earlier, the odds say you'd have died before you ever learned to walk. For almost all of human history, the most dangerous thing a person could do was simply be a child. You've heard the number. Back then, people only lived to 30. Sounds about right. It's also one of the most misleading sentences in all of popular history, and the truth hiding underneath it is darker and stranger than the myth ever was. Because the ones who survived that gauntlet didn't quietly fade out at 35. A lot of them grew old. Gray hair, grandchildren, 70 winters behind them. Which leaves us with a question almost nobody wants to sit with. If they could already live that long, then what, exactly, did all our progress actually buy us? Two researchers spent years counting the dead across the last hunter-gatherer societies left on Earth, and the single most common age they found people dying wasn't 30. It wasn't 40. We'll get to that number, and it's going to stay with you. But first, you need to see why the one they taught you in school was a lie. So let's take the number apart. 30. Where does it even come from? Picture 10 people born into the same Stone Age band. Line them up in your mind. Now, watch what history does to them. 5 of those 10 never see their 5th birthday. Fever, infection, a hard winter. They're gone before they can speak in full sentences. But the other 5? They grow up. They hunt, they raise children, they bury their own parents, and they die, on average, somewhere around 70. Now do the math the way a demographer does. Add up all 10 lifespans. Divide by 10. 5 lives that barely started, dragging everything down, and you land at an average of about 36. Look at what just happened. Not one single person in that group actually died at 36. The number describes nobody. It's an average stretched across 2 completely different fates, the children who never made it and the elders who lived to meet their grandchildren. That's the trick. That's the entire trick. In 2007, 2 anthropologists, Michael Gervin and Hillard Kaplan, went looking for the real number, the one the average hides. They spent years pulling together death records from the hunter-gatherer societies still living that life today. And what they found rewrites the whole story. We'll get to their number. It's going to hit harder once you understand what it actually had to survive. Because here's the part that should stop you cold. If 5 of those 10 grew old, what was killing the other 5 before they ever had the chance? To understand what those children were up against, you have to leave the modern world completely. So come back with me. It's just before dawn. You're inside a shelter. Hide stretched over bone, the air thick with wood smoke and breath. A woman is giving birth. There are no clean hands here, no way to stop bleeding that won't stop on its own, no way to turn a baby that's lying the wrong way. Everyone in that shelter knows 2 lives are on the table tonight, and that both of them might be gone by sunrise. This wasn't rare. This was an ordinary Tuesday. In 2013, 2 researchers, Anthony Volk and Jeremy Atkinson, gathered infant and child death rates from dozens of hunter-gatherer and historical populations, trying to reconstruct the world our species actually grew up in. The numbers they landed on are hard to even hold in your head. Around 1 in 4 babies, 27%, did not survive their first year, and close to half of all children never reached puberty at all. Sit with that. Half. If you'd been born into that world, a coin flip decided whether you'd ever become an adult. Your parents wouldn't have assumed you'd live. They would have hoped. And they would have buried brothers and sisters of yours quietly and kept moving, because the group could not afford to stop. Do something for me here. Take half a second and picture the people you'd lose if you'd been born back then. Then tell me in the comments, out of everyone you love, who do you think would have made it past 5 with you? I read these. The answers are going to wreck you. Here's what almost nobody understands about all that death. The children in those numbers weren't living short adult lives. They weren't living adult lives at all. they never reach the part where aging even begins. Which means the famous 30 was never about grown-ups dropping dead young. It was about children never getting to grow up in the first place. But say you made it. Say you were one of the survivors who walked out of childhood alive. You still weren't safe, because the next thing waiting for you could kill you through something as small as a scratch. Imagine it's an ordinary afternoon. You're crossing a stream, the rocks are slick, and you go down, hard. A sharp edge opens your shin. It's not deep. By modern standards, it's nothing, the kind of cut you'd rinse off and forget. You wrap it in hide and keep walking. 3 days later, the skin around it is hot, red, swollen tight. By the end of the week, you're shaking with fever, and the people who love you are watching you slip away from a scratch you barely noticed. There is nothing they can do. No pill, no clinic, nothing but wait and hope and usually grieve. This is the part the 30-year myth completely erases. For almost the entire human story, the gap between a minor injury and a fatal one was paper thin, and the thing that separated them hadn't been invented yet. Dig up a skeleton from this world, and the story is written right into the bone. Fractures that healed crooked because no one could set them. Abscessed teeth that drilled infection straight toward the brain. The faint, telltale scarring where bone fought a battle against infection. Sometimes won, often didn't. A cavity, a broken arm, a bad tooth. Any one of them could be a death sentence. And here's what I need you to really feel, because it changes everything. These people were not biologically weaker than you. Their bodies were not flimsier or more fragile or less evolved. Drop a healthy modern human into that world with no medicine, and the exact same scratch kills them just as dead. The difference between them and us was never the body. It was the toolkit. They were missing one invention, and it's the same invention quietly protecting you right now, today, without you ever thinking about it. So you'd expect the story to be simple from here. Humans invent better tools, build settlements, grow more food, and death retreats. Except that's not what happened. The moment we started building the world we call civilization, the dying got worse. We tell this story as a straight line, cavemen at one end, skyscrapers at the other, and steady progress connecting the two. More farming, more comfort, more safety, every century better than the last. It's a comforting story. It's also wrong. And the bones from the moment we settled down prove it. Go back about 12,000 years to the people who first traded the hunt for the field. On paper, it's humanity's greatest upgrade, a reliable harvest, food you could store, a reason to finally stop moving. So here's what you'd never guess. Those first farmers were sicker, smaller, and in many places dying younger than the hunter-gatherers they replaced. A French paleodemographer named Jean-Pierre Bouquet-Appel spent his career reading this exact moment out of cemetery after cemetery across 3 continents. And he found a strange, dark signature buried in the graves. As people settled into farming, the number of children's skeletons didn't fall, it climbed. Families were having more babies, and more of those babies were dying. Walk into one of those early villages, and you can almost smell why. People packed close together for the first time. Animals living right alongside them, their waste, their diseases crossing over into human bodies. Water fouled by too many people in one place. Grain stores drawing rats. Crowd diseases, the smallpox, the measles, the tuberculosis, need crowds to survive. And we had just handed them exactly that. The hunter-gatherers, spread thin and always moving, had been a moving target. Farmers stood still and let the plagues catch up. So if it wasn't childhood alone, and it wasn't disease alone, and it wasn't even civilization making things better, then the lie about 30 had to be hiding somewhere else. And the place it was hiding wasn't in the dirt. It was in us. So let's be fair and give the myth its best shot. Maybe the skeptics are right. Maybe ancient people really did die young, and the whole "they lived to 70" story is just wishful thinking. Soft scientists romanticizing the past. There's even a real reason to suspect it. And it starts with a problem nobody talks about. It is genuinely hard to tell how old a skeleton was when it died. A young skeleton is easy. Bones fuse on a schedule, teeth come in on a clock. But once someone's fully grown, that clock runs out. Telling a 45-year-old skeleton from a 65-year-old one is brutally difficult. So for decades, researchers just swept everyone older into one vague pile labeled old adult and moved on. In 1977, an anthropologist named C. Owen Lovejoy and his team published the largest prehistoric cemetery ever fully studied in North America, a site called Libin, over 1,300 skeletons. And Libin became the textbook fight over this exact problem. When your method can't tell 70 from 50, are you reading real lives? Or are you just reading the blurriness of your own ruler? Here's where the myth finally breaks. Because if low ages were just bad measurement, the error would be random, noise. Instead, the same answer keeps surfacing from completely different directions. Dig up fossils across tens of thousands of years, longer lives. Walk into a living hunter-gatherer camp and count real funerals, longer lives. Two methods that share none of the same flaws, pointing at the same truth. Which means the 30-year myth was never really a measurement error at all. It survived for a different reason, a reason that has nothing to do with bones, and everything to do with why we so badly want the past to be worse than it was. Remember those two researchers from the start? The ones who went looking for the number the average hides? It's time. Michael Gervin and Hillard Kaplan pulled together death records from hunter-gatherer peoples still living that way today. The Hadza in Tanzania, the Ache in Paraguay, the Hiwi of Venezuela. Real people, real funerals, counted carefully. And they asked a different question. Not the average age of death, dragged into the dirt by lost children, but the most common age an adult actually died. The single age that came up more than any other. It wasn't 30. It wasn't 40. It wasn't even 50. It was 72. 72. If you survived childhood, the most likely way for your story to end was as an old person, gray-haired, surrounded by people who knew you your whole life, having lived about as long as a lot of people live right now. The cave dweller dropping dead at 30 never existed. He's a statistical ghost. The real ancient human, the one who made it, grew old. And this wasn't some recent fluke. Anthropologists Rachel Kaspari and Sang-Hee Lee tracked survival across the fossil record and found the number of humans living into old age climbed dramatically tens of thousands of years ago. Old enough that long life isn't modern at all. It's woven into who we are. We have always been a species with elders. If that just rearranged something in how you picture your own ancestors, do me a favor and subscribe. This whole channel is built on taking the story you were handed and turning it over to see what's underneath. There's more coming, and you don't want to miss what's next. But the number isn't the real ending, because it forces one last question, the one this entire video has been walking toward. So if ancient humans could already live to 70, what did we actually invent? What did all the medicine, all the progress, all of it, what did it really buy us? Here's the answer, and it's smaller and stranger than you'd think. We didn't raise the ceiling. 70, 80 years, that was always there, always possible, always within reach for the ones who got lucky. What we did was reach down and catch the ones who used to fall. The babies who used to die in their first winter. The mothers who used to bleed out at dawn. The boy with the infected scratch. We didn't make life longer at the top. We stopped cutting it short at the bottom. We didn't raise the ceiling, we raised the floor. And that changes what you are. You are not someone who beat death. Nobody beats death. You're someone the floor finally caught. Every ancestor standing behind you is a person who, against staggering odds, didn't fall. You exist because 1,000 fragile lives in a row each made it through one more winter. So let me leave you with the question. Knowing what you know now, that you're not the first humans to grow old, just the first to expect it, does that make you feel safer or more fragile? Tell me below. You were never promised the years. You were only ever lent them by everyone who refused to fall before you got here.